Peace and blessings, my sisters and brothers. This is your brother, Falowo Fayemi Adishaya Opayamin, also known as Khepra Ptah. Today, we're going to talk about Obatala, the elder of the Orishas. This is a continuation of the Science of the Orisha series, where we will explore how the Yoruba deities operate in the world as forces of nature. This series will also cover their function not only as spiritual beings, but also as factors that shape our environment as well as our psychological makeup. More importantly, we're going to talk about and examine how the Orishas are here to guide us as we strive to fulfill our destiny as well as understand our place in the universe. So keep in mind that the Orishas are emissaries of Olodumare. So we're talking about not only understanding our place in the universe, but how the universe itself operates. So before then, I'd like to give thanks and praises to all my ancestors, my teachers, and guides. I give thanks and praise to all the forces. I give thanks and praise to those spirits of long ago. I give thanks and praise to the spirits that have led me here, and I give thanks and praises to my teachers that come from OIDSI, and going all the way back to Ogun compound. I give thanks and praise to my teacher and elder Obafemi Fayemi, and I give thanks and praise to all the priests and priestesses of the lineage. Obatala is the king of the white cloth, the eldest of the Orishas, and he is also known as Orisha La, the primordial Orisha. Now, his animals are the boa constrictor, the elephant, the silverback gorilla, and the spider. And Obatala represents the pure nature of our being. He is the owner of all heads, and his color is white. Now, the number of Obatala is 8, and his dwelling place is the mountains and hills, which has been in the Yoruba word okay. So Obatala represents the pure consciousness that is the indwelling spirit and intelligence within all living beings. And he is the embodiment of Olodumare's wisdom. And it is Obatala that comes to earth on the sacred chain, also known as the DNA strand. The DNA strand makes up chromosomes, or it is made up. It makes up the chromosomes that you find within the nucleus of every cell. Pardon me. So, when it comes to Obatala, we say that Obatala is an indwelling intelligence as well as a living being. This entity contains information of every individual. Obatala is the one who forms the baby in the womb. Obatala knows who you are because Obatala dwells within your being. And Obatala is the parent of all the Orishas as well as humans. It is Obatala who also dwells in darkness, just like your brain dwells in darkness. Obatala rules the head, and this is why we must keep a cool head at all times. This will help us make the right decisions. And when we keep a cool head, this will also keep us in alignment. So let's contemplate on the strands of a fiber in a cloth. Obatala's name actually means the chief of the white cloth, is translated by some. So this reflects the patterns of the matrix. So a mathematical matrix consists of numbers going up and down in rows and columns. That's how it's constructed. So it's kind of like how our world operates, like a computer program. It's the information that holds our world together. That's why we're held together. We're all in part of this interwoven existence where we're interdependent. Now, Yemoja weaves the fabric of creation together. And it is consciousness that pervades the fabric of creation. Yemoja is the wife of Obatala, the true wife. And Yemoja is also the goddess of the waters, or the Orisha of the waters. And she is associated with 16 snails. Now, 16 is the sacred number of Ifa because it represents the 16 patterns of energy that make up existence itself. The snail in Yoruba, called Igben, is an animal associated with Obatala, and this hints to Obatala's presence in all 16 Odus. These old dudes in which I'm talking about are the patterns used in divination by the priest or the babalao when it comes to reading a person's destiny or the situations they have going on in life. So Obatala is the owner of the white cloth, representing the fabric of existence and the rows and columns that make up the matrix in which we have our being. Excuse me. Pardon me, having one of those moments of allergy season. Give me one moment. It's good to keep this handy. Some white tissue. All right. So we were talking about the matrix and how it's made up, how it exists, and how we exist within it. And I also spoke a little bit about the Odu, representing the patterns of divination. And these patterns are not only of divination, but they also represent the very aspects of existence that make up our world. So these rows and columns are the codes that keep the universe intact. Just like DNA is a code of life with variations of the 64 codons. And this is not too different when it comes to Ifa and the system of divination itself. Now, Ifa is an oracle and the living system of divination. It has the 16 patterns that break down into the 256 different combinations. And there's also an oracle called the I Ching. And this comes out of China. But it is believed that the I Ching has half of the 16 patterns that are utilized in Ifa. The 8 patterns add up to 64 combinations, and 4 times 64 is 256. So this is the same number. There's 64 codons when it comes to your DNA makeup. There are configurations of DNA existence of our universe. So when you're looking at these patterns, right? I don't know if you paid attention to the circle with the symbols around it that was shown when we first began this video. But you'll see that there's a circle, and around it you'll see these 16 patterns, and that's what these 16 patterns are. So you can always look it up. Look up Odu Ifa, ODU Ifa IFA. So it represents the DNA of the universe, but it also represents the DNA of your very existence and your destiny. The oracles operate on the probability aspects that is aligned with the will of the indwelling intelligence of the universe itself. So when you're tapping into the Orishas and you get deep enough, you'll discover that we mark the Odu, like the Babala on a tray. We're actually pushing buttons. This is what the priests of Ifa do. You discover that there are ways to push buttons to tap into the cosmic computer program. This is what rituals are meant for. So when you sing and pray, you're tapping into the voice activated aspect of the universe. When a Babalao draws markings on a tray called the Opan, or the occultist even draws sigils, this is pushing the buttons to activate access to this cosmic program. Now, Obatala is within all 16 patterns because Obatala represents that which weaves them all together with the help of his beautiful wife, Yemoja. Obatala is coolness. So when the planet first is forming, it's hot. And when the earth was young, there was like molten rock, lava and everywhere, gas, vapor, all this. Obatala makes this all inhabitable by cooling things down. And that's not the story of what took place according to the Yoruba story of creation, but I'm explaining the story of the science of creation when it comes to Obatala's handiwork in nature. So Obatala brings coolness and makes this world habitable. The Yoruba traditions teaches us that your head, when it is hot, you have to cool your head off. Otherwise, you'll find yourself like making a whole lot of bad choices, and you'll be out of alignment. You'll make poor judgments and even be exposed to psychic attacks. Not only are you not in alignment, but it's also evident that your life force is off. So, in the teachings of Taoist Tai Chi and Qigong traditions, you'll learn about the life force being connected with the head, connected with the stomach, and connected with the heart. So they're looking at these 3 regions, and which we'll talk about in another video. But according to Qigong, if your head is hot and your stomach is cold, you're out of balance. And this is evident. If your hands are always cold, that means that you're out of balance. You want to have a cool head, right? And the stomach should be warm. Your digestive tract must also work along with your ability to eliminate waste from your system. Otherwise, you're like a walking petri dish of diseases. So keep in mind, you have neurons in your head as well as in your stomach. So you have the ori inu in the gut area, which is also fed during a head feeding ritual. Okay. So when something is not right, you get a warning as to a feeling in the gut. You literally have a gut brain. So Obatala is the elder with the knowledge, who has the wisdom to guide humanity. And keep in mind, Obatala is also dwelling within us, as Obatala is dwelling in the mountains and around us, you see. So he's the elder of the knowledge and has the wisdom to guide us. He represents the elder that dwells in a mountain, who is full of wisdom and experience. He is looked upon for guidance by humans and Orishas alike due to the depth of his insight, and he is the master of patience. In Yoruba, it's called Suuru. Okay, so he is the master of patience, right? Patience is the father of good character, which is necessary for us to be in harmony with who we are and fulfill our destiny. Obatala exhibits wisdom and patience to the depths of his insight because of his experience, and Olodumare gives Obatala the authority to enter his house at will. And Obatala can have personal conversations with Olodumare. Obatala deals with mercy, and he is the most merciful of all the Orishas. Now be warned, there's an aspect of Obatala that is known as Ajaguna, and Ajaguna is a warrior aspect of Obatala. And people who have this aspect of Obatala are often mistaken for children of Shango. Shango's colors are red and white. Ajaguna's colors are white and red. A lot of times his eleke or his necklace may look kind of like this. You see that there's mostly white and there's a couple beads, just like a bead of red, but mostly white. So that's the warrior aspect of Obatala. But because Obatala aided in the creation of humanity, he is never enticed with the idea of destroying us. Obatala does not like to see us suffer, regardless of how wicked we may have behaved. Obatala sees us all as his children, and this is why Obatala pleads on our behalf. Another thing that we must understand is why forgiveness is important. Many times, the most hardest person to forgive is ourselves. And because of our lack of self-forgiveness, we put ourselves to rigorous trials and tribulations. Now, whether we know this or not, a lot of times when you have a bunch of anger, a lot of anger and self-hate, you'll find yourself getting into a lot of accidents. So these are self-inflicted. A lot of times you will find yourself literally in the wrong place at the wrong time. I knew a person who I worked with years ago, and this person could be standing by a truck and somebody throws a brick to land in a truck, and the brick would end up hitting them in the head. And one time they were by a bunch of boards and the boards fell on top of them, stuff like that. But the more I talked to this person, I discovered that this person had a lot of self-forgiving to do. Yeah, and there we go with the church bells. I guess that's the cue, right? Anyway, so not only when you're talking about dealing with yourself, you got to be careful of what you think about yourself and what you say to yourself about yourself, because you could bring injury to yourself and even those around you because of your lack of self-forgiveness. Now, Obatala wishes for us to see the divine within ourselves by tuning into the indwelling spirit. And we must remember that we are who we are, who we associate with, and the things we think about. Okay? We are here to bring back those pieces of us, or that is, of the Supreme Being that has been shattered. We have to bring back those shattered pieces. We all represent shattered elements of the one divine. But at first, you have to bring those shattered elements back together within yourself. You have to bring the shattered aspects back into oneness. You got to bring back the members. In other words, you have to remember. Hence, we take on the memory of the elephant, which is symbolic of the gentle yet strong-headed nature of Obatala. The elephant is a huge, gentle animal, yet it can become quite destructive if crossed. Or when it comes to protecting its young and defending its family and territory. Now, even though we may get stains on our character in physical form, the highest aspects of ourselves cannot be stained. Obatala deals with the mountain because he represents the aspect of the highest part of who we are. And we must overcome the obstacles that keep us in the bottom or at the bottom of who we are, the bottom of success, the bottom of achievement, and the bottom of knowing. So we want to climb, we want to ascend the heights, we want to rise up. That is to elevate mentally and spiritually, rising above those hazards that keep us in a state of stagnation. Obatala embodies clarity, focus, attention, and purity. Obatala is Olodumare and Olorun's representative on earth. By the way, Olorun and Obatala is the same being. I mean, Olorun and Olodumare is the same being. But in like Lukumi, the Western traditions, Obatala is considered to be a son of Olodumare, okay, or the son. So a lot of times you'll see him even syncretized with, somebody see him as Jesus or identify him with Jesus and so forth. But Obatala is Obatala. Jesus is Jesus, okay? Now, Obatala is Olorun's representative on earth, and he speaks on the behalf of all of us, making sure that there is fair treatment towards all. Unfortunately, even the other Orishas accuse Obatala of being arrogant, and this is done out of jealousy. He is like the unappreciated parent, whom the child never listens to, but whenever there is a problem or when the child gets in trouble, he runs back to his parents for help. We must remember that there are always repercussions for our actions, just as there are rewards for our sacrifices. I mentioned mountains earlier, and I think it's important. Let's talk about the mountains. Mountains are nature's handiwork, right? They form from the Earth's crust, and they represent something that is formed by pressure of plates that may be colliding with each other beneath the Earth's surface. This pressure of these plates within the Earth's crust creates mountains. So when you got these plates pressing up, they push up like mountains and mountain ranges. That's how they are formed. So a lot of times, the way we elevate, we have to go through pressure in our lifetime. We go through pressure. Sometimes you will find yourself in conflict, but you are meant to learn lessons from these conflicts, okay? Not to continually identify with the conflict, but see this conflict as a lesson to cause you to become more aware of situations, more mindful, and at the same time, figure things out in a different way or go a different path than where you may have been traveling, which may have been the wrong path. And then you run into an obstacle that's meant to get you to go in a different direction. So you don't keep going by that path. But sometimes you have obstacles that are placed in your path that can throw you off. And this is where clarity, the clarity of Obatala comes into play. This is why we talk about doing work with the head. This is why we talk about consultations and so forth, so that you can tap into that guidance that can put you back on the right track. So the ascension that I speak of is the result of pressure. The pyramids represented they're basically stone mountains. They also represented places of ascension. They were called Murder, and today a lot of chematologists refer to them as being Murderkut. But Murder means ascension, it also means to cultivate, and it also means love. Okay, so I just thought I'd throw that in. So, places of ascension is where Obatala is represented as the transcendental aspect of the universe, reminding us that eventually we're going to make it to that point of our being where we ourselves awaken. So Obatala is the wise man who brings the message from the top of the mountain and the frequency of elevation, resulting in the raising of one's personal vibration. Yemoja, who is the wife of Obatala, is the one who weaves together the fabric of creation and is also considered to be a water deity. So we got to keep that in mind because water has a lot to do with energy. A lot of times when you look in African spiritual traditions, Water is identified with a lot of things, not just physical water, but water has a tendency to be identified with the spirit world as well. Okay. Aburu buye abushise abu ato sori owoyo fun. Ashe. One of the ways we greet Obatala, we say, Hepa, Baba, Hepa. So that's the same as the greeting for Oya. Okay. So Yemowo is spelled Yemowo. 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 So Obatala represents purity of the spirit and of us being in physical vehicles in a forever changing world. It reminds us that we go through conditions, but the spirit remains unconditioned. The boa constrictor is another sacred animal to Obatala. Now, it's interesting that there's a lot of things about the boa being this animal that attacks its prey, it crushes its prey. It's a very strong animal, okay? So it'd be hard for the average animal to just wrestle with a boa constrictor because a boa constrictor will wrap itself around the animal's body. A lot of times it will tie itself around the animal's throat and it will start to squeeze. Okay, that's why it's called a boa constrictor, because it's constricting your movements and it's also constricting your breath. Okay, it is believed to cut off the breath of its prey and swallow it whole. Now you must also learn to constrict or restrict the breath of your lower or lesser nature, then integrate it. So you swallow it whole and you learn to blend those fragmented parts of yourself, which represents aspects of the divine that have been broken up and scattered. You see, this is then integrated into your being. So you find those parts of yourself that may have been fragmented and broken up through the traumas that you went through throughout your life. Because sometimes these fragmented parts of ourselves come out in the form of undeveloped inner child, you see, or the part of you that likes to argue, the part of you that likes to fight, the part of you that likes to lash out, the part of you that's afraid. Okay. Um, these are fragmented aspects of yourself that were locked and crystallized in certain places of the time that you was traumatized. So it's good to go into forms of meditation. So one of the way that you can restrict the breast of the beast that you're trying to capture, right, is by slowing down your breath. The average person, they breathe about 18 breaths per minute. So we slow down the breath to less than 18 breaths per minute. We reach deeper states of concentration when it comes to meditation and so forth. Okay, so you also have the snail. We mentioned the snail earlier as Igbin. The snail is an animal that is at home wherever it goes. The snail is sacred to Obatala because it represents coolness, gentleness, and patience. Okay, all this talks about moving slow. When you're trying to move fast and do things too quickly, you make mistakes. So they say Obatala deals with patience, even when it comes to slowing down the breath. So Karmic Dynasty talks about breathing exercises. So I share one quick breathing exercise with you. What you're going to do, you want to sit up straight. You don't want your back curved. And you're going to breathe through the nose. And you can breathe in, counting to 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold it. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then breathe out. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold it. 1, 2, 3, 4. So you have 8 plus 8 breaths. About the last number is 8, in case that helps. So just do that like in the morning. You can do that for 15 minutes to a half an hour. And what that does is that it puts you in a state of calm and peace. And when you start to experience this feeling that you're not breathing or even thinking, this is when you're going into that higher state of trance. Your mind is not in the way. So you're in a trance or into the trance of the mind and its many thoughts. And you're tapping into that purity of who and what you are. Okay. So that snail represents coolness, keeping a cool head and keeping a cool demeanor and being cool when there's issues and things taking place, right? Sometimes when you're arguing with your significant other, you know, Many of us have made this mistake of, okay, well, I'm not going to let you say that to me. I'm going to go ahead and say something back. Next thing you know, you just keep on going back and forth and back and forth. But you see, the problem is that nobody's getting their point across because you're not arguing with the whole person. You're arguing with a part of that person. This is why a lot of times they seem so intelligent other times, and then all of a sudden it's like, well, who are you? Man, you're talking crazy right now. That's not how you normally talk, you see. So the best thing to do at this time is to calm down, breathe, and if you got to go for a walk, it's better to do that. You know, believe me, a lot of times I wish I would have known this and have acted upon that plenty of times. But hey, that's how we learn, okay? No regrets. It's just something that you learn as you grow. The snail, okay, represents that coolness, represent having that home. Remember, when it comes to spirit, you're always home because the spirit world is only separated by a veil of illusion. The spirit world is your home, but spirit is dwelling within you. But you are dealing with the veil of illusion, which appears as separation. Now, the snail is an androgynous creature, and the word hermaphrodite comes into mind. All right. When we break down the word hermaphrodite, you get Hermes Aphrodite, who is Tahuti and Heteru to the Cometians. But the Yoruba version of Hermes and Aphrodite can either be Oshun or Orunmila and Oshun. But there's two different aspects of Hermes. There's Hermes Trismegistus, which more line up with the Tahuti aspect of the Orunmila, and then there's just Hermes, who is that guy that runs around with the wings on his boots. Okay, those are actually two different entities. So in this case, I'm talking about Orunmila and Oshun, representing working the two hemispheres of the brain. Orunmila and Oshun, and this is for those who are in the know, plays a very important role when it comes to Ifa divination. But we'll talk about that some other time. But it's a harmony of the function of the two brain hemispheres. The androgynous aspect of one's being is not necessarily physical, but the unification of the two brain hemispheres, which is the yin and the yang within. Okay? So when you are working with both hemispheres of the brain, you have become, in that sense, androgyne. Not in a sexual way, but because you're dealing with both the yin and the yang, and you have them working as a harmonious duality and a complementary, working in harmony. That's what that is. So everything around us is connected with this cosmic yin and yang principle. So it is up to us to stay in harmony, keeping a balance of hot and cold, and bringing that together and getting vapor. When the two come together, it creates vapor and moves upwards. So everything around us is solidified light and energy. We call this matter. Some people talk about energy slash matter, but keep in mind that matter is energy that has been solidified. Creation itself is the mat of Olodumare. And the word mat is hidden in the word matrix. A matrix is an enclosure, a womb. So we see the word mat is found in matrix as well as matter. And matter is another word for mother, hence maternal. Then you have in the Cometian school of thought, ma'at. So not to mention you see the word mat in mathematics. A mathematical matrix is represented as numbers going up and down and across as rows and columns of numbers, just like they showed in that movie, The Matrix. When you get a chance, just Google up what is a matrix, and they'll show this to you. The diviner, that is the Awo or Babalawo in the Yoruba tradition, works on the mat, right? Same with the Orisha, or not the Orisha, but the Orisha and Babalarisha, Orisha, when they consult. They will work with cowrie shells and so forth, and they'll use a mat. In Cuban Lukumi, there is what you call the Oriata, meaning the master of the mat. So the fibers of creation are connected to columns and rows of numbers, which represent the nature of the matrix in which we live. I cannot stress this enough. According to the Yoruba, we live within a spherical universe in which we happen to be contained. The Yoruba describes our universe as a giant calabash. Obatala is the light, the coolness, and the wisdom of Olodumare. And Obatala also has a counterpart that covers the lower aspect of the calabash, whose name is Oduduwa. So Obatala is the light, and Oduduwa is the darkness. And it was Oduduwa who took over creation, for the human form after Obatala got drunk on palm wine. It was Oduduwa who steps in and completes the work of Obatala. So sometimes Oduduwa is seen as a male, sometimes Oduduwa is seen as a female. So there's a lot of confusion. There's the Oduduwa, the Orisha, and there's also, according to the Yorubas, the ancestor named Oduduwa, who was the founder of the Yoruba people. Now that ancestor is seen as male. So you have these different aspects of who Oduduwa and what Oduduwa means. But Oduduwa appears to also mean the womb that brings forth character, or the womb of character, or the black womb of character. So everything around us is light that is solidified. And the energy is indeed reminding us of Obatala's character and presence, which is why Obatala is important when it comes to creation. That's because at the same time, it is consciousness that dwells within matter, and which is within all things, from plants and animals to stones and rivers. And being in human form, there are certain sensations that you're going to experience that you wouldn't experience if you was just pure energy. So having a physical body is an opportunity of expression. That's why it is to be respected. God, or the Supreme Being, expresses her, him, and itself through physical forms. And this way, the divine goes through these experiences on earth through us. Obatala shapes the physical form from clay. Olodumare animates these forms through the breath, also known as Imi. And Obatala is, in this regard, functions as the assistant to Olodumare. Olodumare operates through emanations. Olodumare sends out extensions of itself in the form of the Orishas, like Obatala, who in turn creates humans, while Olodumare puts his, her breath into the forms, making us to be living souls. The Odu, called Ejiobe, teaches us that humans actually become Orishas. So you have the potential to awaken the divine within you and not only become an honored ancestor, but also be a force of nature operating within the universe. So even though Olodumare operates to be, appears to be separate from his creation and her creation, it is in us, in the form of our own spirit, in which Olodumare dwells and expresses itself. And then we have our personality, in which, we all can live through and have unique experiences as a unique expression. So this way you can explain that Olodumare expresses itself as consciousness that breaks up into many fragments and give each fragment an individual nature. And we'll have a conversation with these fragments. And this is what Olodumare says to these fragments of itself. It says, I'm going to send you to school. You're going to go down to earth and you're going to learn these lessons. You're going to see what it's like to be in this particular situation. And then you're going to let me know all about it. See, you was granted a scholarship to travel from Ekoli Orun to Ekoli Aye. So Ekoli Orun is the heavenly realm, and Ekoli Aye is the earth realm. Aye is marketplace. So this is the place where there is exchange. So from the heavenly realm to the earthly realm is who you are, where you have come from, and where you are now expressing yourself. And this is where you're going to return back to Ekoli Orun. Okay? But when you awaken to who you are, you'll understand that the separation is an idea of perception so that you can have an experience. Learn what you need to learn, while at the same time, you're going to leave evidence in its apparent physical place of your existence. So as our collective purpose, this includes the biological continuity on this planet as being a descendant of our ancestors who will in turn have offspring. So we ourselves will become ancestors as well. So each and every one of us is, is this embodiment who carry this sleeping divinity within us, which in time will be awakened. But we also must get a grip on our biological makeup. And this is designed to keep us connected to our physical form. However, since it's biological, it's meant to dwell here on Earth and function from the place of survival and reproduction. And this is why we have various centers of awareness that must be awakened. Like, for instance, in the Indian system, they're called chakras. You know, in the Yoruba, you have your Iwaju. These are all different aspects of ourselves. You know, so that's a good question. There is a story about the Orishas, you know, being both ancestral and being human. They call Ogun the first among the mortals, but he's also an Orisha. And this is talking about your potential, but at the same time, there were primordial deities who were collectively called Orumale. These Orumale express themselves as Orishas, but the Orishas are also ancestors. And you're going to learn in the Yoruba tradition, it teaches that without the ancestors, there's no Orisha. You can have ancestors without the Orisha, but you cannot have Orisha without ancestors. Okay? So the ancestors of the Orishas are ancestral beings, but they're not necessarily your blood ancestors. Okay? So you can look at ancestors in more than one way. You can say that the river is an ancestor. You can say that the mountain's an ancestor. But there are also beings and people who were deified. Like, for instance, there's Shango, who is called Jakuta. And it's known that Jakuta was the preeminent aspect of Shango. And then there are those who say that there was a historical Shango who was a king, and that this person committed suicide and became an Orisha after being redeemed, right? You know, so yes, in Ethiopia it teaches that each person has the potential to be an Orisha. However, you have to do the work. So you have to do the work. Orishas are forces of nature. We too are expressions of forces of nature. And one of the biggest illusions that we learn in Western teachings and Western education is that we are totally separate from nature. And nothing can be further from the truth. There are things that you cannot control, right? That's going to affect you. And then you're depending on it, right? So if somebody was to, let's say if the mountain was to erupt, you have to get away from that mountain. You can't stay down there because, well, you can get messed up. You can get killed. So you have to move. But you have to be in harmony, because if you're in harmony with your environment, then you will feel that it's time to move, because you're not going to want to get caught up in that mountain erupting. So you'll check out the environment around you and you see all the birds are flying away and the animals are moving. So something must be up. And then you have like a gut instinct that's saying, hey, I might want to investigate this further. Well, there's no animals on this mountain. The birds are no longer coming to settle on this mountain. So maybe it's time for me to listen to my instinct and get off the mountain. That's when you're one with nature. So yes, the Orishas dwell within us, and there are teachings that say that the Orishas were once human. I even have heard my own Baba say that the Orishas are buried in Nigeria, and that they were once human beings. You can look at it in two ways, though, because it doesn't necessarily mean that the force of thunder and lightning died and was buried Okay, but what this can also represent is that these people had strong personalities representing that Orisha, and therefore they were considered the incarnation of that Orisha. Hope I make sense. So yes, you can take on the personality of the Orisha, and you can become such an embodiment of that Orisha that you can be considered that Orisha. There's that as well. Okay, but you become who you worship and what you worship. So if you want to connect with the Orishas and you want to connect with a friend of yours, you're going to associate with that friend because they're rich. You want the wealth that this person have, then you might want to learn from this rich person. So what do? You hang around this person and you develop qualities and traits as well as you develop knowledge of how this person may have operated. You see, that's how it works. Peace and blessings, Jante. So you want to make sure that you are associated with the Orishas. If you want to connect with Shango, then you associate with his elements. You want to connect with Obatala, you associate with his elements. It'd be good for you to go on top of a mountain and connect with that energy there and become more at peace, activating that connection with Obatala. So I spoke about the various centers of awareness. So we find ourselves becoming slaves to our hormones, our glands, our frontal lobe, and a reptilian cord, aka the reptile part of the brain. In other words, we must awaken these higher sense faculties within our being so that we do not identify with that which is keeping us back. Okay? It keeps us in fight or flight mode all the time. And we could easily be triggered based on some trauma that we may have experienced, or even trauma that our ancestors experienced, in which we may be holding on to the genetic memory of such events. So the survival mechanism is a challenge to overcome because this is what we are made up of to maintain our physical form. But if you can awaken these higher aspects of your being through prayer, meditation, and rituals, stuff, you're keeping your mind centered on the indwelling spirit as well. You begin to develop a feeling of elevation and an elevated sense of being. But remember, you're always in connecting with the indwelling spirit. So you have various rituals and initiations. These rituals and initiations help us remember who we are by awakening various faculties within our being. This way, we can look at every human being differently when we see that this person may be acting a certain way. And why it's not always uh, because they're 100% wicked, but because they're in survival mode at that point in time. So I mentioned arguing earlier. You may be arguing with this person's prefrontal lobe or something, which is why you're not getting your point across. Okay, because they're too busy defending themselves. They're on defense mode. So there's a certain part of this person that's arguing back at you and with you. You're not arguing. A lot of times when you guys are arguing, you're not talking to the whole person. And believe it or not, you're not expressing your whole self if you're in a state of arguing and if there's anger there, you see. So this includes your tone of voice and the things you say. Now, the ego is an echo of the biological need to survive. The problem is when we have identified with the ego for so long that on the subconscious level, or that is in the back of our minds, we believe that if the ego dies, we die. So we're constantly defending it, just like we're continuing to, fight against the egos of others, which is basically the ego trying to establish its territory. So when we're in the state of forgiveness, we begin to awaken another part of ourselves too. We can release ourselves from the bondage of things that hold us to our past. You know? When you're in a state of remembrance, you can keep in mind that the indwelling intelligence, which is God, lives within the other person, just as it is within you. So the more you elevate your consciousness, the more light you produce. Then you attract cosmic forces who will assist you in your endeavors. So when you tap into that higher aspect of yourself and you move beyond just mere survival and mechanistic thinking, you begin to expand outward energetically and you become a beacon of light that the cosmic forces can't detect. Therefore, these entities can assist you in your evolution. And that's why it's important for us to stay away from wallowing in feelings of sadness, revenge, depression, and being in constant anger without transmuting these things. That's when the internal alchemy comes into place, you see. Now, being human beings, we're going to have emotions, that is energy and motion. And we're going to experience what it feels like to hurt. But when you identify with these feelings and you keep wallowing in these feelings and hold on to grudges, you don't let go of these things. It becomes energetically toxic. Also, physically toxic. You'll literally develop sickness in your body for holding on to these things. Like I mentioned in another video, holding on to anger causes a person to be, well, accident prone and have liver issues and everything else. We stay in this particular state. Not only do our auric field contract, your energy goes down and you lose the protection of those elevated forces that would guide us and keep us out of harm's way and keep us vital and healthy. This does not mean that you become a doormat to anyone. It does not mean that you don't recognize when someone is overstepping their bounds with you. You have to establish boundaries as an individual. This is part of you maintaining your character and while you maneuver through this physical plane. But you also have to maintain a balance and remain within a state of remembrance to keep you from being scattered, where you end up losing your personal integrity. Look at the word integrity, which contains the word to integrate. So when you're not integrated, you have no integrity and you're scattered. This is the whole reason why we're talking about bringing back the pieces of the broken and shattered calabash, which you'll find throughout the Yoruba teachings. And this is why we serve Orishas like Obatala, because we are also serving the indwelling spirit in its purity. And we can strive to be like our father Obatala. And when you strive to be like your father, you begin to radiate Ashe. And being on your purpose, you're in alignment with your destiny. The teachings and the activities like rituals are meant to help you build up your connection with the ancestors and the Orisha, ultimately with the divine. And this also increases the energy of your auric field, where people will acknowledge you when you're in the room, where you don't even have to say anything. They will feel your energy. So you're welcome in any space where people will be accepting of such an endeavor and they're part of such an endeavor, then that means collectively you're expanding. It's kind of like creating a positive thought form. So you create an atmosphere of healing and elevation, and people will be able to sense that. Now, the Yoruba teachings, it tells about how Obatala came to earth from heaven on a chain, and he saw nothing but a watery abyss. And that's why I wanted to clear that up earlier when I talked about the planet needing to cool off. This was Olokun's kingdom. Obatala took his snail shell full of sand and poured it into the ocean, forming land. In other words, he dispersed the atoms throughout the undifferentiated sea of energy and eventually created land, bringing form to the physical realm, which came from the undifferentiated energy. There's an interesting story that I'm going to talk about too, about it's actually an allusion to the nature of your spirit being pure. There's a story that talks about how Eshu tricked Obatala into spilling palm oil all over his whites. Now, for those who practice this tradition, they know how hard it is to get palm oil out of your whites. It's extremely difficult. So, in this case, Obatala was encouraged to do some work where he was to take vats full of palm oil and transport them into another location. Okay. He began to spill some of the palm oil on his whites. Right. And despite staining his whites, Obatala continued to be diligent doing the work that he was supposed to do. Obatala was asked to pick up these vats of palm oil and transport these vats into another place and store them. So the person who had Obatala perform this task was none other than Eshu the trickster, the spirit of communication himself. But Obatala, understanding that Eshu, and he knew it was Eshu, Obatala, understanding Eshu's tricks, continued to do the work until the work was done. Why is this important? Obatala, understanding the tricks of Eshu, knows that the tricks played by Eshu have lessons, Eshu can only really trick you when you identify with that which is other than your true self, which is the indwelling spirit. All Eshu did was stain Obatala's clothes, okay? But Obatala himself was not stained by the palm oil, because Obatala represents that purity. So Obatala had given his word that he would move these vats, therefore he completed his obligation. And as Eshu is referred to being the trickster, you can also look at the various legends and mythologies and teachings around the world where you discover that trickster deities tend to be spirits of communication. But anyway, this was something being communicated to Obatala, right? Sometimes you have to pay attention. So even as your pure spirit comes in a physical form, it still goes through challenges. It still goes through problems where you may feel disrespected. You're going to have challenges. No matter how spiritual you become, you're still going to have to, pay rent if you're living in a city. You're still going to have to do things that are going to cover your basic needs to survive. So a lot of times we find ourselves getting stained as we move through life. We keep in mind that these outer things are not really who we are, at least at the highest level. Sometimes someone may say something to you that is disrespectful, and you must understand that your job may be at stake and you have a family to feed. So you might have to take the higher ground in this particular situation. If it's not something that's bad, there's no reason to fly off the handle just because somebody got a little snarky with you, because this person may be having a problem, because you have to think of the fact that you got to feed your family. You got to take the higher ground in this particular situation because they may have said something that may have been a dart thrown at your pride at the time, but ultimately you're looking at something greater than this particular situation. And this person may have been in a certain mood and it may never have anything to do with you, but they're just going through something. But let's say you haul off and hit this person. Now you lose your job and you've lost your means to a financial end to support your family. As Shu helps us to sharpen our character, he gives us the opportunity to prove that we are who we say we are. So a lot of times we identify with trauma and we behave according to such. We act as though we cannot take off these clothes in which we've been wearing and put on another garment. But we must understand that we are the indwelling spirit and we can move beyond these things at times. So when you are dirty, right, because your clothes got dirty because you're doing the work, that's what you're supposed to do. So your clothes are going to get a little dirty when you're doing the work, okay? But you have to sacrifice looking good, looking sharp to do some menial tasks at times. When a priest goes out and do some work, right? We're not going to be wearing no garments. Let's say if you're dealing with an Nephi priest or an Orisha priest, if we got to do some sacrificial work, they're not going to be going out wearing their best garments. They go put on a jean and some jeans and a t-shirt and get busy because they know that they're about to get in the field. They're ready to work. You see what I mean? But if you're about to do the work and you're trying to look good, you'd be a fool to go out and do your ritual work. You're working with chickens and animals, but you're going to wear a suit and tie because you're not there to look good at that point. You're there to get the work done, you see. Dirty work gets crucial out here in these trenches. Ah, yes, it does. hmm They say it's a dirty job, but somebody's got to do it. Uh, the highest part of ourselves is that we need to be remembered and restored and brought back together and resurrected, you know. So if you're familiar with the story about Osir, or the Greek way of saying it, Osiris, it's about how he was murdered and broken into 14 pieces and later brought back together and resurrected. And the same thing happens with Obatala in the form of Orisha Allah, when a huge boulder is literally rolled down the hill and it smashes Orisha Allah into pieces, into miniature fragments. It's pretty much the same story in that regard because it's supposed to be talking about the same lesson. Obatala is the light that as shoe breaks into pieces, it scatters. Obatala represents the indwelling spirit. We all are Obatala's children. A lot of times, if you can't tell who the child is or which Orisha one belongs to, you can always tell Obatala. Everybody's a child of Obatala. So, Obatala, in many cases, doesn't like salt. Obatala likes water, like cool water. This is why we pour libations. So whenever we do it, it's called the Atutu ritual. We're doing a libation to cool off that area so where you can work with spirit. Water doesn't have an enemy, and water brings that coolness, making it so that the spiritual temperature is stabilized. So we stabilize our world so that we may move forward. So whenever you're about to do a ritual, when it comes to African tradition or those traditions that are connected to ancestors, we use water. We use a lot of water in our prayer and everything else. We bathe in water and do special rituals to clean ourselves off. Obatala likes things like yams and coconuts, yucca, among other things. And these offerings are often brought to the top of a mountain or a hill, which is Obatala's sacred dwelling. Now, Obatala is the most forgiving of all the Orishas, but even if you decide to work with him, I'll always suggest the supervision of an experienced priest to guide you along the way. Okay? Now, you can give Obatala 8 balls of rice, and you can also give Obatala rice pudding, but never give Obatala alcohol. It is true. Obatala's misuse of alcohol is what got him into trouble, where he made several mistakes. It is said that um, his love for palm wine got him so out of control that even Yemoja couldn't take no more of it, and she left him. Okay, so it is said that Yemoja was actually with Obatala before Obatala was with Yemoja. It is also Obatala who makes these terrible mistakes by creating deformed humans because of his drunkenness from palm wine. At the time of creation, Obatala drank so much palm wine because he had got thirsty from being in the sun, molding these human forms all that time. He sat up under a palm tree and he had went to sleep. But the human forms he had created were deformed. But Olodumare gave them the breath of life anyway. And these human forms had humpbacks, missing limbs, mental illnesses. They were crippled. Okay. So when you see these type of people, you have to be kind to them because they come under Obatala's protection. We see people who have this disposition. We acknowledge Obatala. We say, ba, ba, ba. So you must respect these people. Never disrespect them. You are forbidden to make fun of disabled people in any way when it comes to this tradition. It is frowned upon and is disrespectful, and it angers Obatala. Good herbs to work with on behalf of Obatala is like hops, gotu kola, skullcaps, ginkgo biloba. You can also take baths in herbs like spearmint or mint and spinach. All these have a very refreshing feeling to them. You break them up, tear them up, put it in your bathtub, and just clean yourself off with these herbs, with these leaves, and so forth. And you can take the herbs that I mentioned earlier if you want to increase the sharpness of your memory, like gotu kola, Damiana, and so forth. It all helps you to remember. Okay. Okay, so is drunkenness protected? Oh no, when it comes to the children of Obatala, drunkenness is discouraged. Um, and the reason why is because, when you're a child of Obatala, right, children of Obatala get really messed up off alcohol. So you're really discouraged from drinking any type of alcohol and liquor. So different. Everybody who gets a reading and discover who their Orisha may be, they will get a set of taboos. A lot of times it's directly connected with the Orisha. A lot of times fish or seafood may be taken away from a child of Yemoja, or, not all the time, but maybe, right? Chicken may be taken away from people with a certain odoo. Um, Smoking may be taken away from a person with a certain Odu. Like, for instance, a child of Oya, because Oya controls the lungs. But everybody has a different makeup. So there's certain things that you may be told that you cannot eat, certain colors that you may be told that you should not wear, and certain patterns that you need to stay away from. Because due to your personal constitution, it may create confusion in you or cause you to do things that are out of character, which is why a lot of times we are encouraged to wear white, especially in certain traditions where you're going to your first year of initiation. Okay, especially in like Lukumi regular Diocha practices. Someone, they often tell their initiates to wear white. Now, in my personal lineage, I was not told that I needed to wear white for the whole year, but that is something that I go through during initiatory practices. You are to wear white. Okay, so I tell people that in this case, it's dealing with the purity. In a lot of martial arts, when you start off with your white belt. So you gotta come in as a student. It also represents being in the egg. So you're being reborn. White also represents the aspect of ire, which is expansion. And black represents that which contracts. Okay, so it's not so much as good or evil. You just want to deal with expansion, right? And you also want to understand contraction. So it's good to clean ourselves off energetically. And it's also very good when you're dealing with this type of energy, when you want to have more of a cognitive and develop your cognitive powers. It's good to eat green vegetables and alkaloids and stuff like that. It's not good to wake up eating sugary foods or eating big old heavy meats because it can dull your senses for the rest of the day. It can actually dull the mind. So it's good to have fresh things. Don't just put white and brown on your plate. Put a little bit of green on there too. Okay. So with that being said, it's about time for us to wrap up. I want to leave you with a song for Obatala, and it's a very popular song. Actually, I have it on my YouTube channel, but I'm gonna just throw this in. This is a popular song for Obatala. It's said to mean the king of the white cloth, who brings coolness, focus, and clarity. I'm gonna sing the song for you really quick. I'm sure you heard it for those who have been to a bimbe or have listened to Obatala in like CDs and music and stuff. But it goes, Baba fururu ere o okanye ye legibo eleri fa obasi basawo ejibo re obasi bao enua ye yawaloro elesil kan. I'm gonna break it down. Baba fururu ere o, Father of the white cloth that rises and swells like a cloud, owner of the whips of profit, Boa, honored owner of Ejibo. The boa, that is the boa constrictor, is the sacred animal to Obatala, as said earlier. Ejibo is actually located in Nigeria as part of the Oshun state. Ereri fa obasi basawo, Ejibo rere obasi ao. The witness to the oracle strikes and strike with a stick, just behold. Ejibo's whip of prophet strike and strike, behold. All right. Okay, and then this next is like the mouth of the world. Our tribe has the word for the tradition. Our tribe has the word for the tradition. Enua ye yawaloro, elesil kan. Then you repeat it. Baba fururu ereo. Okanye ye legibo. Ere rifa obasi basawo. Ejibore obasi bao. Enua ye yawaloro. Iyawaloro elesil kan. Then the next part it goes. Enua ye mi moseo. Enuaye mi baba. Enuaye mi moseo. Enuaye mi baba. The mouth of the world is filled with life. Knowledge completes it. You will fill the world with life, Father. Then you repeat. The mouth of the world filled with life. Knowledge completes it. You will fill the world with life, Father. Obatala tawini wini sekure bobo lainya serere. Obatala, who falls in a fine shower to bring blessings. Then you say, serere, baba serere o. Bobo lainya serere. Serere, baba serere o. Bobo lainya serere. Do well, Obatala, do well. Everything comes from your goodness. Now we go sing the whole song. Baba fururu ereo, o kanye ye lejibo, elerifa obasi basawo, ejiborere obasi awo, enua ye watawaloro, iyawaloro elesilkan. Enua ye mi moseo, enua ye mi baba. Enua ye mi moseo, enua ye mi baba. Obatala tawini wini sekure, bobo la inya serere. Serere, baba serere o, bobo la inya serere. Serere, obatala serere o, bobo la inya serere. All right, sisters and brothers. I did my performance for the day. If you have any questions, feel free to hit a brother up. I can be reached at 206-960-7999. And also, you'll see my email go across the bottom of the street under Khepra Ptah. It's always great speaking with my sisters and brothers. Until we talk again, may you have a wonderful day. And may you chill.